All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our training for the 2023 Connecticut SAT School Day for test coordinators. I want to thank you for taking the time out to join us today. We actually had a really lively in-person session yesterday, and it felt really awesome to be in front of people. Not that I'm not in front of you, but I can't see you. But again, I am like very grateful for your work that you're doing to support this program for your students and their families. And I also want to give a shout out to school counselors because this is National School Counselor Week. And everybody knows how important school counselors are. They're really the support for parents, for students. And I love my school counselor for my students. My girls are in high school and it's great. And I love all the support from the administration as well. So everybody, thank you for the roles that you play and the support that you give to our children. So my name is Michelle Rosado, and I work at the State Department of Education, and I am trying to figure out how to advance my slides here. Oh, there we go. Okay. So there's my name, and I can have my colleague Deirdre and Abe introduce themselves.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Deirdre, and I work at the State Department of Ed with Abe and Michelle, and have the privilege of working with a really great team at the College Board, and all of you in preparation for the upcoming Connecticut SAT School Day. And my role is to help with accommodations and accessibility for our students with 504s and IEPs, as well as our English learners and multilingual learners. So thanks for taking time out to be with us. Abe?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Deirdre. Thanks to all the CSDE team members and then College Board. And thank you all from the districts for taking the time to attend today's session and have a enjoyable session. Thank you.
Adrian, you want to jump in?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Adrienne Cupper. I work at the College Board on the state implementation team. I am joined by a number of colleagues today. I'm going to quickly introduce them. We have Aixa Julius, who you're going to hear from in the presentation today. She's going to be the main person speaking on the College Board side. She's on our digital team. We also have James Wilson from our state implementation team. David Gesualdi from our state and district partnership team. Many of you know him. We have Keisha Smith from SSD on the line. She's our rock star. And so we're all here. We're excited to be with you guys today to support you.
Awesome, thanks. All right, there we go. So here's our goals. We're here to get you up to speed on any questions you have about getting ready to administer the test. If you administered the test last year, everything is very similar, but we're going to take you through it. So, all right, so here are the dates for the test. I sometimes get questions about, do I need to let you know what day we're testing? Do we have to choose a date? No, you can pick whatever, any of those available dates to test your students, and you can actually use any of the dates to do makeups. We encourage you to use the March dates to do makeups, only because the April dates, which you can use, don't feel like you can't, but there might be a little additional work because you have to do test settings for accommodated students for the April dates. The March information that you put in will not carry over to the April dates. So anyway, and there's the accommodated window. If you take a look at the roster, the NAR that you can get through SSD, you'll know if any students are tested over the accommodated window. It's usually students that test over 2 days. Okay, I'm not really going to get much into this, but there are sort of the same flexibilities that are being carried over again this year for testing, and this is also explained in your test coordinator manual. Okay, TIDE registration. I did send out an email, I think it was the beginning of January about how students are registered to take the Connecticut SAT school day. In the districts, you don't need to use bulk registration like you might use if you were taking another College Board test. The CSDE uses PSIS registration, the Public School Information System, which is maintained by at least one or two people in each of your school districts are your PSIS coordinators, and they maintain a list of all your students in your school district, including all the demographic information for those students. We pull a file from PSIS multiple times during this testing season, if you will, to account for students who move in and move out of your school district. And that's how we register kids to take the Connecticut SAT school day. If you remember from last year, or if you're new, students cannot take the digital test unless they appear in College Board Tide. So if you happen to go into Tide because you received access on the 7th, or you should have if you're the test coordinator, you should take a look at the students that are appearing in Tide. And if you notice that you're missing students, or that students' grade levels are not matching what you might see, like for instance, in Power School or something like that you're using in your school, you'd want to reach out to your PSIS coordinator so they can make any appropriate updates for those students. And then we will pull multiple files, and then those students will appear. The next time we pull a file, you'll see them in Tide, College Board Tide. And just to reiterate on this, if you remembered from last year, but once a student appears in College Board Tide, we're not able to remove that student. So if you did make a change, for instance, if a student went from grade 11 to 12 because of credits and they really should not be taking the test, if they're already in Tide as an 11th grader, you would just disregard their information. We do not use that for accountability. We rely on our PSIS registration. So, and if you have questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. Thanks. All right, so there's different ways that students can practice, and I know that Aisa is going to kind of talk about this, but if you go to digitaltesting.collegeboard.org, which is in one of our subsequent slides, you'll see that there are different ways that students can practice where they don't need to log in. So let's see. You are attending test coordinator training. That's what this is. But we also have some online modules available. If you wanted to do some Tide training, or if you want to look at the test coordinator training again, you can. It's a little bit different, but these are modules that are self-paced. You kind of move through the slides on your own, but the proctor training, I'd say, is the most important one. So anyone that is administering the test must take the proctor training. You could do it as a group. So as a test coordinator in your building, you could show the proctor training and you could all go through it together, or you can assign it to proctors to do individually. And yesterday, test coordinators, SSD coordinators, and district administrators should have received an email from me with the links to the training modules. And there is no, in order to do the modules, you do not need to create an account, which was kind of an area of confusion from last year. So we listened to your feedback and we've streamlined that. You can just forward the link to proctors, or like I said, you could create a training and share that training all together with everybody. All right, so there is a pre-administration session that we encourage schools to hold, because it will help you test the bandwidth of having all your students testing at the same time, but it's like a kind of like a non-stakes way of testing it all out before you actually run the test. So the pre-administration, or it's called the questionnaire, takes about 15 minutes to do, because in Connecticut, students do not answer the questionnaire because of privacy. We're not allowed to collect that information. It's really just a chance for students to enter their 4 free score sends. So you don't need to hold the pre-administration session if students don't want to send free score sends. You can do it beforehand. If you wanted to, students can do it after they complete the test. But once students go into the pre-administration session, they cannot go back in. So they should decide if they're going to submit scores, sends for free or not. They can't go back in once they've started the pre-administration session. Another thing is that schools don't need parental consent for the questionnaire. Some states require that, but we're not administering the questionnaire, so you don't need to get parental consent. So those are some of the highlights on that. And we also have a special script that we'll be posting for Connecticut on our website, and you'll be getting it in your materials next week. At least I think so, Adrian, right?
Yes.
Okay,
you're
thanks.
correct.
All right. And there are some materials that do need to get returned, even though this is a digital test. There are certain materials. So if you take a look at page 41 of your test coordinator manual, you'll see which items need to get returned to the College Board. And as you probably are well aware, students must have a College Board account to view their results for the Connecticut SAT School Day. And those are the release dates for students testing in March and in April. If you have any students who decide they don't want to use their accommodations for which they've been approved in SSD online, you'll need to get a letter or an email from the parents to keep on file. You don't need to return that to the College Board, but you would keep that. And you want to make sure you have that. And then if you want to permanently remove any accommodations, there are instructions on how to do that on SSD. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to contact me or Deirdre. Thanks. And then if students happen to have any things like broken arms, concussions, etc., there's a different method of getting support for those students. And it's explained here on that slide. And again, if you have any questions about any of these specific items, you can contact me or Deirdre. All right, so I know I've shared the link to this coordinator checklist with you before, but it kind of breaks everything down. I think it's very useful to sort of have like your different kind of activities that you need to complete broken down. Obviously, this is just a suggested way of planning out your test duties, but I think it's a good one. All right, and the times for testing are the same as they've been all along, including last year. So here are the testing times that you need. And obviously it doesn't include things like getting everybody into the rooms and things like that, but these are just the times for standard testers. And then here's time in 1/2. And just as a reminder, we don't administer the essay as part of the Connecticut SAT School Day. And there's all the timetables are in the standard test manual and the accommodated manual. You'll be receiving copies of those in your shipments next week to test coordinators. We've also posted copies of those on the Connecticut SAT School Day website. And I did include links to that in the email I sent out yesterday. So we kind of talked about the pre-administration session, but it's the questionnaire, sort of both kind of thing. That's what the pre-administration session is. And this is the reason to do it. It actually gives students a way and proctors of simulating what it's going to be like on test day. They're actually going into the TA interface, using the secure browser, etc. Students do need to have their test tickets to do the pre-administration session. And Aisa is going to explain to you how you would print those test tickets from Tide. Right, so we talked about this. We're going to share the specific Connecticut script because the kids are just entering their score sends. So there really are the directions that are included in the manuals are not really specific to Connecticut because they explain like more about completing the questions. So, oops. All right, and I think this is my cue to turn it over to Aisa. So Aisa, just let me know when you want to advance the slides.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. My name is Aixa Julius, and I am part of the College Board Digital team. So today I will hopefully answer most or all of your questions in regards to what to expect in using the applications that will be used for testing. The very first thing that I always like to point out and start with is just making yourself comfortable with the digital testing portal. It's our website where that houses all of the browsers, all the sign-in links to what you need to administer the assessment, technical requirements, guides, resources, copies of the manuals as well. So that all can be is housed in the digital testing portal. One thing, do keep in mind that it's not specific to Connecticut, of course. So I would highly advise that you use this site to get um, to the links that you need, like Tide, for example, or the TA interface. You will find resources like the manuals and such in the Connecticut website itself as well. So you have multiple places for those PDF online copies should you need it now. I know your shipment should be arriving to you next week. Thank you. As I mentioned, some of the resources. Oh, thank you. Some of the resources that are available here, you can see it will be in the resources page of the digital site. A few that I do like to point out, aside of course of the manual, which you as the test coordinator should be very comfortable with and hopefully read through it all by the time testing happens. As test coordinators or your technology coordinators, you can also find the Tide user guides, digital test preview guides, and how to manage student settings and guides. You can also find that there. The one that I do like to point out for proctors, and you will get this in your shipment as well, and you can also find it online, is the digital testing room quick start guide. So it's just a little pamphlet that has a lot of really good information in case there is an issue on testing day and how to quickly resolve that issue, especially some common technical issues that happen during testing. So I highly recommend that if you are able to put one in every testing room, that you provide that to your proctors, just to have a copy of that, because it does come in handy more than you would expect. Okay, so you should, as I'm sure most of you have already participated last year, but as you are aware or may not be aware, we do use Cambium's systems to deliver the test. And what you will use as the test coordinator, which you should have had received access this week, it's Tide. You should have received an email from Cambium letting you know that your account has been activated. And hopefully by now you have gone in there already. If you haven't or did not get that email, please let us know so we can get you going. If you're not the designated test coordinator, if you're the technology coordinator or the assistant tech coordinator, you may not have gotten that email. So please reach out to the test coordinator for the assessment to give you access to Tide. So we do use 3 applications. So one of them, as I mentioned, is Tide. That's for the test coordinator. The test administrator or TA interface is what the proctors will use. And the secure browsers, of course, is what the students use to test. And I will go over just a little bit over Tide. And what to expect. So as I just mentioned, you should have received an email from donot reply@cambiumassessment.com. The email is just pretty simple and it just looks, here's a screenshot of it. So if you have not gotten that email, please let us know. You should have received access on February 7th. And once you get access to Tide, of course, you can start assigning other users to the College Board version of Tide. And also you can start reviewing, making sure all of your students are in there as well. Go to the next. Perfect. So some of the functions are included in TIDE as a test coordinator. So you will really be using that throughout the entire assessment, beginning now through overseeing the test during the testing windows, and also you might need it after. And what you should really get familiar with is um, managing just some of those creation of accounts, managing students' information in terms of modifying test settings for students with accommodations. So as a test coordinator, what you see in your dashboard is kind of separated into two sections. The left side is to prepare you for testing. Here is where you go to users, you will create staff accounts, and that's one of the very first tasks that you should already start identifying the staff that will assist you, and then using that to create individual or multiple accounts for your users, and you need to identify who will have what kind of role for testing. We'll go over in a little bit here as well. Managing rosters. This is an optional roster feature here in Tide that you can use uh, for organization purposes and to kind of just group some students together. Do keep in mind this is just optional and it's not required for testing. Other features is monitoring digital test sessions. And what that means is on the right side of the dashboard under monitoring test progress, there is a report there that is live session monitoring, which you can use to just kind of oversee what's happening on test day in all the separate rooms throughout your school, kind of having like your eyes in everything at once. And also in Tide, you will be using the to print student test tickets. And of course, that is a requirement prior to test day because all your students will be required to have a test ticket to be able to test. And we can move forward. This is just a brief exercise. So it's kind of just giving you just steps on how and what to do to log into Tide. If you haven't already, please make sure that you can get in. By now, if you just did receive the email on the 7th, by now that link has expired because it likes to just be active for about 15 minutes. But just go through the forgot your password and you will receive a new activation email. The same applies for when you create your Proctor accounts. Just alert them that they may get that email, and just if of course it is very unlikely they may get to it within the 15 minutes, just have them go through the forgot password steps to activate a new email to get into Tide. You can also share these steps with them, and then they can just start to get familiar with Tide. And the one thing is they will need, so that the email address, make sure that you're using your school designated email address to create the accounts. That will be their usernames, and they will need to set up their password. That Tide account will be completely separate than the login, than the Connecticut CAI accounts that you may have. If you have a Connecticut CAI Tide account, that login will be completely separate than the College Board Tide account. Alrighty, so these are just suggestions of just some of the requirements and tasks that are that you should be getting ahead of, or just doing ahead of that. This is just a suggestive timeline, of course. So we'll go over just what you should be doing about 4 weeks before test day or even before. So preparing for your staff, as I mentioned, you should by now, if you haven't already started thinking about it, just start thinking about who will be supporting you in the assessment. And that accounts, of course, for any assistant test coordinator that you may have, your SSD coordinator, if it's you, or if you have someone else that is in charge of that. There needs to be a required tech coordinator. Some of you may have one at the school level, or you may have one at the district level. And other testing staff roles are proctors and room and hall monitors. So again, just start thinking who will be assisting you with that, with with the staff roles and responsibilities, and just start creating those accounts for those that will need it. Do keep in mind that you can create DA accounts and proctor accounts. I do suggest that you only give access as DA or digital admins to those that will be or are responsible to like updating test settings, for example. So your SSD coordinator, you should give them a DA type of account because they will be able to, as that role, they'll be able to update student test settings. I would not recommend doing that for your proctors, of course. You don't want to give them access to student information, especially if their test settings can be updated. So be mindful of who you provide that, give that type of access to. The next slide is just what's expected in terms of numbers. So per each 1 to 25 students, for example, we expect that there should be at least one proctor. Not at least one proctor. There has to be one proctor to administer the test, and for room monitors, up to one is recommended. And of course, as that number of students grows per testing room, the other role staff will grow as well. We just want to make sure that your proctor has enough people there to assist them in case there are any issues, of course. So we want to make sure that, especially if they are in a bigger room, like in gymnasium or auditorium, it is hard for just one person to oversee everything. So that's why we do highly recommend that you give them all the assistance and all the support that they may need in case something happens. And then the next one will be creating user accounts. As I mentioned, by now you should have your access to Tide. You will need to be you will create accounts for proctors that have to be created for those for that staff to be able to administer the test. As I mentioned, those accounts will use different login information than any other CSDE account. And all that information and instructions is also available in your coordinator manual. So this is just kind of just calling out the type of manuals that you will receive. And you do have access to this in the online versions now, either through the College Board resources page or through the Connecticut one. But next week, you will get your actual shipment. Just a reminder, it will be one shipment that will account for all the manuals that you may need and any other like the irregularity reports or other materials that you will need for testing. The one shipment it should be enough for your primary testing window, which is in March, and for your makeup window at the end of April, if you choose to use that testing window as your makeup. So you will only receive one for both. So and what you should expect in there in terms of manuals, of course, the coordinator manual, which includes information about test day setup, pre-admin sessions, information about the forms and how to return materials, and other steps as a test coordinator and tasks that you will need to do. You also have standard testing manuals, which includes test day scripts and information for your proctors. I do recommend as a test coordinator, you also get familiar with that, and just to kind of make sure that all your proctors know ahead of time, not only what type of room they will be assigned to, but what script they will be using, because it does vary depending of whether it's a standard room or a room for students with accommodations. And of course, you will get an accommodated testing manual as well, or manuals. This is just brief instructions on how to create user accounts. So once you log into Tide, you'll see your dashboard on the left side under users. You will see a few options, one of them being add users, which you can use to individually add new users. If you just have one additional person that you would like to add as a user, you can just do it one by one. Make sure you do have the school designated email address. And no, we do not recommend, we highly recommend to use school assigned emails, do not use personal emails. So you can do that to do individual users, addition of users. If you're not sure who you've added yet, you can navigate to users, view, edit, export users. You can pull if you want to take a look at who's being added already, you can do so that way. And the last one is upload users. So if you do have a good amount of staff that will be supporting you in the assessment, you can just do a bulk upload of their user accounts. You go to upload users. In there, you will find a Excel a document that you can download, a template that can be used to add all of those users and then upload them. It's a lot easier, and really it works, especially when you have even more than 5 staff that you will need to add in Tide. And this is just an exercise that walks you through exactly how to add users. I'll just walk you through step by steps to what I just mentioned. So it walks you through going through add user and how to individually add those users. So you will need, once you add their email, first and last name, you will need to choose between digital admin, DA, or Proctor accounts. And then the rest will be pre-populated by Tide for the school, with your school information, and you just add them and they will receive the same email you received, and then they will need to go through the whole process of activating their account. And this is just a walkthrough on how to upload Proctor accounts. Again, you just go down to click on upload users, and then this kind of lists all the information that you will need ahead of time. It's similar to what you just saw in the individual ad. You will need email address, first, last name, role, PR for Proctor, or DA for digital admin. State, of course, it should be Connecticut, CT, and then the district and school org that you can find in the student data view. It is required to be able to upload this file, to use this file to upload students, or to upload users. Not students. You cannot upload students in Tide. It has to come through the upload by the state. So I will backtrack on that, what I just mentioned. Okay, planning your space is another task as a test coordinator. Just how you start thinking about the staff that will be supporting you. You also need to start thinking of how many rooms you will need for the test. And of course, that aligns with the number of staff that will be assisting. So some of, I don't know if we went ahead. Well, so some of the options of preparing for your spaces, just keep in mind that you can, if you have a large school and a large number of students testing, you can use larger spaces, of course, to test, like auditoriums and gymnasiums. Again, do keep in mind that those for those larger rooms, just make sure that you have enough monitors in those rooms and the bandwidth is up. It's able to hold that large number of students. You can also, of course, use smaller spaces such as classrooms. You may need to get, depending on how many students with accommodations and depending on their needs, and if you're not able to group a lot of them together in one room, if you may need a room per just one student, just make sure you have enough space and enough staff to assist with those. Some recommendations to just consider when choosing those rooms, just make sure that they are away from any active classes that may cause a lot of noise. Just make sure they're separate from other classes or any other tests that you, for whatever reason you may have during those testing days. And make sure that the schedules, like your PA system and any bells are turned off for that as well, so it doesn't cause any issues. So preparing your school, as I just mentioned, just make sure that the bell schedules are turned off, any PA system announcements are turned off, and also you may need to just kind of just work with your school because you may require some adjustments may be required, especially when it comes to lunch times. Because the test cannot be interrupted for lunch. The students, once they start the test, they have to complete the entire test. They cannot break for lunch. There are some breaks incorporated into the script, to allow the students to have some time, ahead of the next section. But the students cannot break for lunch. Lunches must take place after the testing is complete. So make sure that you work with your schools in terms of that timing, and make sure that you are aware, and your students, even parents, are aware of the length of the test, and that lunch may be delayed than what they are used to. I know some schools may have an earlier lunch, so do account that schedule, especially for students that have extended time or testing in one day, because that will be prolonged. We can go to the next one. So just briefly, just some guidelines. This same guidelines are found in your manual. Just what the requirements for seating and furnitures for test day. One of them just want to highlight is just so the students have enough space for a testing device and for scratch papers, because they will get some scratch papers as well. So just make sure the student has enough room for all of that, because you want them to be comfortable, because it is a long test. It's over 3 hours they're sitting there. So here's another just sitting and secure requirement, and just some information about the policy for choosing the rooms and the seating arrangements. Partitions are highly recommended for digital testing. So, because it does conceal the students' writing surface and testing device from other students. So if you're able to create, I've seen and we've heard of some schools getting really creative with that. But just make sure that if you are using partitions, that your proctor or room monitors are able to have visibility on the students, because we still want to make sure that everyone's following policy and the requirements for testing. Sitting distance, of course, there is some guidelines here, just some charts. So the next slides will be just some recommendations. This can all be found in your manual, just to kind of give you an example of what kind of seating arrangements are required, and what you can work with in the types of rooms that you may have. Moving forward to just preparing for digital testing. Again, so all of this should be done well ahead of time. We do suggest at least 4 weeks ahead of testing. And some of those do require to ensure that you have all the necessary devices for testing. So all devices must be school owned. And there needs to be devices for every student participating, and of course, a device for each proctor administering the test on test day. All devices must meet the system and technical requirements. Work with your tech coordinator to ensure that everything is up to date. Again, devices must connect to the internet, and devices must be school owned. Some of those devices can be desktops, laptops, iPads, or Chromebooks. We do recommend that you disable any automatic or automated updates, because we don't want any of those devices to auto update ahead of test day and then cause issues on or disrupt the testing day. Devices must maintain a charge of at least 5 hours. So if the students do take the devices home, just make sure that they come on test day, that they charge those devices fully the day before, the night before, because we do want them to not have any disruptions on test day. What we do also recommend is if you're able to have a few additional devices or at least one additional one in each testing room if you can. In the instance, if there is an issue, students, maybe the student forgot to charge their laptop the night before, and that device dies, then you can have the proctor just quickly switch it with the additional device and get the student right back into testing. Again, each testing room must have a dedicated device for the proctor to use the TA interface. And also, I do recommend that the proctor signs in into their TIDE account and into the TA interface ahead of test day, because we've seen some issues on test day with the proctor trying to log in and they cannot, and it just prolongs that testing day. So make sure that even like the day before, just make sure they can log in, that they're familiar, they know to do it, and hopefully by then, by test day, they have already been trained. But just have them make sure they log in and go into TA interface ahead of test day. Some additional recommendations for 2 weeks before test do include some training. So I know Michelle mentioned a little bit about training earlier. So this does count as training for your, if you're a test coordinator, and you should have received yesterday an email with a link to training. You do not need a College Board professional account to sign into that, and you can share that with your proctors as well. So they do not need a professional account either. So that is just an update, and that will hopefully make everything easier when trying to train or when training your staff. Another task that is recommended to do at least 2 weeks ahead of time, or especially if you have movement of students, new students coming in, or that you check your list of students in TIDE as often as you can, or as often as you need. If you haven't done already so far, please do so, just to ensure that all your expected students are there. So the excuse me, the state is the one that uploads the student data into the bulk registration for College Board, that then sends it to CAI, and that's the student list that you will see in TIDE. So make sure that everything is up to date, and you make sure you update any new students, or just in the CSIS portal, because that's whatever is in there for your students is what will be uploaded into what you will see in TIDE, and what will be uploaded by the state. Here's just a walkthrough on how to review student data if you're not familiar with. So in your dashboard, just go to students, you go to view, edit, export students, and make sure when you are in there that you select the right accommodation, the right administration. So you should only see students under the March 22nd administration. So make sure you click that. You should see all your students that are expected to test during that administration. They should all be there by now. If you did administer the test during the 8A test during the fall, if you did the PSAT A9 during the fall, your students will still be there. So it gets everything gets erased and cleared out per school year. So you will see those students from the fall. So it's very, very important that when you want to pull a list of your students, that you click the correct administration. And then also when you get closer or after the primary window, if you are thinking about the makeup, you will again see the full cohort of your students during that makeup administration date of April 25th. So you will see the entire list of your students again. So make sure that you're choosing the correct administration from the drop down, so you don't see duplicates, and to make sure that you're seeing the students. And when it comes down to printing the test tickets, you're printing the correct test tickets for the correct administration. Just briefly, gonna go over just some of the test settings and tools in TIDE. There is a separate training or webinar later this afternoon that will go more into detail in terms of the accommodations. But just briefly, so what you see here is just So the digital SAT is accessible to students with disabilities. We want to, it should be accessible to all. And of course, we do know there's some instances that paper pencil test may be required, but that should be very like a small number, if any. But that chart kind of gave you just a list of what it's available to students in universal tools and what needs to be adjusted in Tide. So that we do have a guide that has been updated for this year. It has a really long name. It is a guide for adjusting test settings in Tide for accommodations and supports. It does, if you're not familiar with this, and you do have a lot of students with accommodations, and you may still be a little bit confused with how it translates the paper pencil into a digital alternative. This guide will walk you through all that you need to know. It will walk you through, let's say we do get a lot of questions about pre-recorded audio MP3. It will tell you, hey, the student has MP3. This is what it means in the digital, what the digital alternative is, and this is what you need to do to get the student set up in Tide when you go in and update the test settings. So this is available in the College Board site. Again, more details about accommodations will be in the later webinar. Just briefly, English learner supports are available for students that need it. So there are supports available such as the bilingual word-for-word bilingual dictionaries, and there's also translated test directions that are available in the College Board resources page. If you do have students that need the the translated test directions, these are not sent to you in your shipment. You will need to go into the College Board site and download those and print those out for your students. So if you do have EL students that will only be using the word-for-word dictionary or the translated or the translated test directions, you do not need to upload the students for in the SSD online or flag those students in Tide if that's the only thing that they will need and use. If the EL students will be using the extended time, that is a different story. You will need to add those students and request that and for it to be approved in SSD Online, which should be pretty much automatic. And then once they're approved in SSD Online, you as a test coordinator work with your SSD coordinator to ensure that the 50% extended time is added in Tide for the students that will be using that support. In addition to that, you will also need to flag the student to yes for EL support. But that is only also used for students that are doing the additional time, not if they are just using the word-to-word dictionary or the translated test directions. So for those students, you can always put them also in your extended time rooms. So if you have any EL students with extended time, they can also be put in the same room with other students that are 50% extended time. Excuse me. Setting accommodations in Tide. So once you go, if you are the one designated to add those or your SSD coordinator, you just log into Tide, go on the left side under test settings and tools, and then go click test settings and tools again. And then once you navigate there, you'll click search once you've chose the right administration, and then it will give you the list of your students. You can do that individually per each student to update the test settings, or you can do an upload test settings and tools. If you click on the upload test settings and tools, it'll take you to the page where you can download the template. One thing that I do want to call out, and I will do it in the next slide, but this one, it kind of walks you through how to bring your student list, and you click on the pencil icon. You edit the test sections for your students as needed, but make sure if they do have extended time, for example, for reading, you need to add the extended time for each of the sections available there. And it's the same as each of the other accommodations that they may have. You have to add those accommodations for each of the sections of the test. And the other available option here is to upload test settings and tools. Again, you go and download the template. And the one thing with this is before you can upload your file, you have to manually select College Board accommodations for each of your students. So you have to touch each of the students' registrations ahead of your upload just to switch the flag to accommodations, CB accommodations. So once you create your file, you can go ahead and process the upload. Do keep in mind that to do the upload, you have to create a new row for each accommodation and for each of the test sections that the accommodation applies to. So if you do have a student with 50% extended time, you will need to create a row for each of the test sections for that registration, meaning you'll need one for the reading, 50% extended time, yes, and then you'll need another one for the writing and language, math, calc, and so forth. It will take a little bit of time, but it's really up to you if you want to do it that way. I've seen most users prefer to do it in the test and settings tool view and just do it individually for each student. Another task as a test coordinator is to create a school-wide student list. So as you build your list, so the entire cohort of students that will be testing can be documented in the school-wide student list. Again, by now, all of those students should be in TIDE. So you can use the school-wide student list to separate and create individual room rosters. So proctors can use that as students come into the testing room. So kind of just as a check for students coming in. So you as a coordinator can identify all the list of your students that were submitted by CSDE through or from the PSIS registration into TIDE. Again, just be diligent about checking that all your students are in there, especially if you had any new students coming to your school. Please make sure you do that ahead of test day to make sure that they are there. And I know there are some scheduled dates of when the state will be uploading those, and as they get closer to the testing date, they will become more frequent because they want to make sure that they catch any new students. So be very diligent and make sure that all the students' information are up to date in the PSIS registration. So the state has the latest and greatest list of students that need to be uploaded into TIDE for testing ahead of that. Also, you as a coordinator, make sure you work with your SSD coordinator if you're not the one responsible for that, just to ensure that that you understand how many students will be testing with accommodations, and that kind of translate into if there's a need for additional testing rooms, additional staff. So kind of all works together, and make sure that you and your SSD coordinator are familiar with the NAR, and make sure that that's ready to go, and you use that when uploading student test settings. Make sure you kind of have that handy hand just to ensure that the students are getting all the accommodations they're approved for. So you can use the school-wide student list to create and separate those into individual rosters, room rosters. But you can also have the roster feature in TIDE, which is 100% optional. So you can also use that to kind of create rosters for each of the testing rooms and use that to print test tickets and make it help you be a little bit more organized or stay organized. If you print a roster, you can print test tickets for students that are in that specific roster. Again, the TIDE roster is completely optional. So make sure if you just keep in mind, if you do group students in TIDE, and you associate them with a particular proctor in a particular room, they're not affiliated with the student list that is generated in the TA interface on test day. So again, that's completely optional. It does not translate or does not get imported into the TA interface. So if you create rosters in Tide, you will not see that roster in the TA interface. The TA interface roster or student list is created based on the students that are in that session in that specific room testing. Um, the optional roster is just for organization purposes, and you can access that through rosters, and you can walk through add rosters. You can view and edit if you've created any, and you can upload rosters as well. The next slide kind of walks you through just step by steps on how to navigate to that and how to create those optional rosters. The next one will be printing test tickets. This is a requirement. It's one of the required tasks ahead of test day. You will need to print test tickets for all your students participating on the administration. So make sure you print them well ahead of the test day, and then you give them to the proctors as needed for each of those rooms. The students will use that to log into the secure browser on test day. So make sure you have that. Um, if you are testing in the makeup, just I wanted to point out that make sure that you will need to print test tickets again, because the same ones cannot be used for the primary testing window, as they will be complete separate registration numbers for the makeup. If you do have any students testing during that April window as the makeup, you will need to reprint test tickets for that. But for the primary, if you do have if you are planning to do the pre-administration ahead of test day, the students will use the same test ticket for the pre-administration. They will use the same ticket for that that testing window in March. So they will use the same test ticket. But make sure you, after the pre-admin session, you take those back and you secure them, because they are considered secure materials, because it does have student information, some student information, and they have their registration number that is affiliated with their test. So one thing I do want to highlight is once student test settings are configured in Tide. So make sure that all test settings are in appropriate test settings are added in Tide ahead of test day, even ahead of printing the test tickets, because we don't want your students to come on test day and then not have the correct accommodations added in Tide. Unfortunately, SSD does not translate those accommodations into Tide. It has to be manually added by you or your test SSD coordinator. So make sure, just as a step, just make sure you add those test settings before you even print the test tickets. So again, so when you are to navigate to where you need to go to print the test tickets, you go to the students view, you go to view, edit, export students. There you will need to make sure you click the SAT school day, March 22nd, 24 and 28 and 29 administration dates. This will filter the students that you need for your for that administration. Once you click the administration, click search, and you will view the results. This will give you the entire list of students. You can verify from their student test settings, and you can begin printing test tickets as well. So make sure that you can use the printing icon to kind of print all your students if you like, or just select some or a few to print test tickets for. Along with just some of the tasks, we'll move on to just days before test day, what you were expected to kind of, or hoping that you are working on. As Michelle mentioned earlier, there are some practices available to you aside from the training links that were sent to you yesterday. There are other ways to practice just being ready for the assessment, one of them being the TA interface practice site. So you can use this to prepare your proctors or even your students. They can go into the student digital test preview, just so they can see what the secure browser will look like and kind of get familiar with some of the tools available. So if you're doing the Proctor one, this is the view that they will see when launching the TA interface. Of course, on test day, it will look a little bit different because it will have the list of, it should say College Board SAT, and it will have the list of the College Board SAT test sections. So to train your staff, you can, as I mentioned, you can use the TA, the test administration practice site, and you can access that through the College Board website. So you can use this to kind of simulate a test day experience on administering the test as a proctor and as a student. So you can do individual ones, how to learn to administer the test by doing the interactive proctor simulation. You can use a TA interface practice site with the student digital test preview for a hands-on testing experience, starting a test session as the proctor and monitoring the student progress while the student digital test preview goes through the approval processes that they will go through on test day, and then exposure to the available universal tools in the secure browser. Also, other resources on how to practice a test administration or resource guides are available in the digital testing portal. The next slide will show you just what you will see in the student digital test preview. You can have, anyone can really go into this as a guest. You as test coordinator or the proctor, if you have some curious parents or some nervous students, you can also guide them to the student digital test preview to just kind of walk through and get familiar with the experience itself. And they will have exposure to the tools, and just kind of what to expect in terms of what the questions will look like, so they can get familiar with the digital test system, delivery system, and all the available features. So the next slide will show you how to get to that test experience or that test preview experience. You start by navigating to the digital microsite, and there on the home page, you will see one of the options is to preview the student digital test experience, and from there you can just do as a guest and walk through that, or you can do if you're doing the dual demo, you can go to the guest session, and then you can enter the demo session ID that you will see in the TA interface practice site, and just kind of walk through that. And again, it will walk you through all the approval process and all the steps that are expected to see on test day. So this is just a great way to just get exposure to what it will look like. Do not do this in the actual secure browser and the actual operational one, because do not use the student's registration number to test out the secure browser, because you do not want to kind of use the student's opportunity. So make sure you are in the preview student digital test experience when trying to test that out ahead of test day. The next slide will walk you through just how to access the giving a test using the TA interface. So if you are doing this as a dual experience, this is where you will find the session ID that will need to be entered in the student preview session ID option. So if you so this is just kind of walking you through what to do to get to launch that practice TA interface site. So fast forward to on test day. So we'll go through what is needed to just oversee and what you will be using, not only as a proctor or test coordinator, but also as a student. So as you know, the secure browser is the student testing application that is used for the pre-administration session as well as testing. The secure browser does prevent students from using any other applications. So it will lock that student to that secure browser and secure it. And the secure browser must be installed on all test taker devices well ahead of test day. So make sure that you work with your tech coordinator just to ensure the secure browser is properly installed in all the test taker devices. So the secure browser that you will install depends on the operating system your students use, of course. So if your school already uses the CA test delivery system and your students, let's say, take the test on Chromebooks or iPads, you'll need to change the assessment program in the secure browser. So we'll go a little bit over that in a bit. But just keep in mind that depending on your operating systems, the secure browser logos will, our icons will look a little bit different. So the CB Secure browser, which is here the one at the top, is used for devices running on Windows or Mac OS. But do keep in mind that does not replace any browser that is used for any Connecticut testing or any other testing that you may have. Both must be installed in those devices. So you must have a CB secure browser, and it will look with like the picture you see here with the acorn. So make sure for devices running in Windows or Mac OS, it is a CB secure browser. For those, for the applications, for Chromebooks and iPads, it will be the secure test browser. So you will see, this is what it will look like. So make sure that ahead of test day or before you start any start the test with your students, your proctors, make sure that they are that they make sure that the organization and assessment settings are changed to the secure test browser before students can access the test on Chromebooks or iPads. So we'll go to the next slide. But again, just make sure if you are testing the same students for other CSD state assessments and the SAT, they will be represented separately, right? So what I mean by that is if you are using, let's say, a Chromebook or an iPad in the secure browser, if they do not see College Board in the top left, if they do see Connecticut on the top left, they will need to go back and change that to College Board. So what you do is in the screen itself at the bottom right, they will need to click return this to secure browser Launchpad, and that will take them to the page that you see here on the right side. It will say Cambium assessments, and will ask them, please select your organization or state, and they will need to switch that to College Board, and then the assessment program will pre-populate to College Board SAT, PSAT 10, or PSAT A9. They will click OK, and that should take them to the College Board secure browser page. It will say College Board at the top left, so make sure before you start the test or even begin, as students are coming in and getting set up, and make sure that it says College Board, because it will cause an error if students try to put in their login information in anything other than the College Board secure browser. So on test day, there are a few tied reports available to you as a test coordinator. One of them, as I mentioned earlier, is the live session monitoring. It is an available feature in Tide that provides test coordinators just insight into the status of all live sessions that are occurring in your school on one screen. This is really helpful for any schools that have multiple testing rooms happening at the same time all over your campus, especially if you have a large campus, to kind of eliminate you having to kind of just run around, just trying to keep your eyes on everything. What you can do is from one central location, keep an eye on what's happening on all your live test sessions from one place. So as a test coordinator, you can use this tool to see test sessions when they have begun, how your students are progressing through the test without having to visit each individual room. It will give you an insight into what's happening. It also keep timing true to what's happening. So you can also make sure that tests will end at a good time. You'll see if there may be a possibility for any delays that you would need to accommodate those lunch schedules again or something like that. Just it gives you true just expectations and great insight into how the students are progressing through testing, how each testing room is progressing through testing. So this just kind of walks you through what you need to do to click to it. The next slide, it will give you a sample view of what it will look like if you choose to use this feature. So what you will see when you run this report, it's just individual room progress. So it'll give you the name of the proctor, what tests they are on, at the time of when it started, and then the number of students that should be testing. It will call out any tests that may have been paused. So keep an eye on that column if you're using this report, just to kind of let you know if any tests have been paused. If it's a room, a standard room, it may be an indication that something may be happening, and then maybe you should go check on in this room and see that everything is still progressing as it should. But it does help you identify if there is an issue. It also giving you just insight into the start times. It'll also help you identify rooms are running on schedule or behind schedule, as I mentioned. So it'll certainly help you just to make sure how everything is progressing through test day. I do highly recommend you use that, especially if you have a lot of testing rooms. It's really just great to use that just to have eyes on everything from one central location. The other report available to you is the Plan and Manage Testing Reports. As test coordinator, you can run this report to just have a list of the student test statuses and student test completions. You can pull this report. I would suggest the next day. Unfortunately, they're not in real time, so you may maybe allow that to kind of run overnight and refresh overnight. You can use this to pull just statuses of tests for all of your students that were expected to test. They'll also give you an eyes of what students did not test or have no testing activity in TIDE, and you can use that to kind of cross-check with your school-wide list of students to see if there are to see what students may need to test on the other days of the primary window as their makeup or on the makeup testing window in April. If you look at this, to access that, you just navigate to monitoring test progress and go to plan and manage testing. On that page, again, make sure that you're clicking the correct administration. But under the get as specific, if you choose to do this, I do advise that, and this is what I do, just go through the third column or the third bullet. And it says students on their any opportunity who have a status, and I will click any in that drop down in the selected administration. So this will give you a full list of all your students. It will also show you the statuses for all your students and their test completion information of everything. So you can export that out if you like, or just have a quick view in there. It's a very useful report, but again, it is unfortunately not in real time. And then the next slide will walk you through what I just said. So it will walk you through how to access this report, and then the suggestions of which one to choose to just get a full list of your students. Again, I do recommend the third bullet, because that's what I myself use the most, because I find it the most useful. It does give you a lot of information, but it's a lot of information that it's sometimes needed to just see exactly what's going on, especially when it comes to just test completions and test statuses of your students. Moving ahead to after test day. Again, you do have a few days. You have a testing window on your primary testing window. So if you do have standard students that may have been absent on day 1, you can use the same test ticket and you can still have them test if you have enough staff and you're able to. You can have them test the next day. They don't have to wait until the April makeup. So you can take advantage of the multiple days of that March testing window just to get as many students tested as you can. But of course, you do have the April makeup available to you should you need it. Um, so you as test coordinator, if you are responsible for the same task that you do during this current primary window, you will need to repeat most of those tasks for the makeup if you're using the makeup in April, such as just compiling a list of students who are absent during the first testing window or may have experienced any type of irregularity that makes them eligible for a makeup. So you need to figure out that list. Do keep in mind that CSDE will upload the full cohort of your students for that April administration. That doesn't mean that all those students are testing again. The state just doesn't know who truly tested during the primary testing window, if there were any irregularities that require or that makes that student eligible for a makeup. So you will see the full list of your students. So make sure that you have you work with your staff and that participated and assisted during the primary to make sure that you have a true list of students who truly need the makeup and compile that list, and make sure that you ahead of test day print the test ticket for the makeup. And if you have any students with accommodations, you will need to re-add those accommodations in Tide for that makeup test, for that makeup registration. So the test settings are affiliated to the registrations, not necessarily with the entire testing available, right? So you will need to repeat that. Just refer to the irregular chart on your manual should you have any questions about irregularities. And if you have any questions, of course, reach out to either College Board or to CSDE. So this page will walk you through what you need to do to pull your list of students. Again, you navigate to Students View, Edit, Export Students. Make sure that you're choosing the SAT School Day, April 25th through 27th as your administration. Once you click search and view results, again, this will give you the full list of all your students. Just go through that and make sure you pick the right students that will need the makeup. And again, make sure that you update those test settings ahead of test day. It is very important that you do so. So I think I've come to the end. So I hope this was very useful. There are any questions or anything, Michelle or Adrian, that you would like me or would like to go over? I think I've seen some questions, but.
It looks like we have a raised hand, but. Tiffany, I'm not sure if you have a question. I'm gonna let you use your mic. So if you want to unmute, you can ask a question, but maybe you put your hand up by mistake. Tiffany, did you have a question? No, I guess not, but it looks like maybe Lynn does. So Lynn, you should be able to go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Our regular test coordinator is out, so we have no one to start the pre-4-week information. Is there a way I can get on there to get into Tide?
Yeah, Lynn, why don't you send me an email and I'll take care of that, okay?
Okay, great, thank you.
Do you have my email?
M. Rosado at.
No, Michelle.
Michelle.
Michelle.Rosado Michelle with 2 L's at ct.gov. I'll put it into the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Adrian, are you still there? Because
I am.
okay, I didn't know
Aisa,
like
can
if
you
you're
see the
working on
questions in
stuff.
the? No, can you see the questions in the chat, Aisa? Because I think these are kind of in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I can see. I can start with the last one and move my way up. So, question from Kimberly is: I recall last year the time getting extended in the 5-minute extra because of students' computers going to sleep. If they were done early before time was over, can the proctor end the 5-minute extended timer if all students are done? No. So that buffer is in place to ensure that all students get all of their allotted time. If there, you might have had some students that may have had some issues. If it's within that 5-minute buffer, do not have your proctor stop or pause any of that. Allow them. It's there for a reason, to account for any delays or issues that they may have. It should only really truly extend the time for the students that need it, or that might have lost, quote unquote, lost some time while their device might have gone to sleep or whatnot, but do not stop them. The secure browser will account the true number of, or not the true number, but that will account for the timing for your students, and will keep that timing regardless of any issues. So just allow the students to test um, through completion. So once that 5-minute buffer is there for a reason, just allow them to do not stop their test. Just have them test.
If the student's computers going to sleep after they're done are what's kind of the problem, locally your tech coordinator or people at your school can adjust the settings of when computers are triggered to automatically go to sleep. That would be my suggestion for addressing that issue.
Yeah, but do not stop or pause the student's test.
Diane, you can go ahead. I made it so you could unmute. Diane, did you have a question? Diane Neely? Maybe not. I saw somebody wanted to know how to print the test tickets for the makeup window. They asked if we could talk about that. I think the instructions are also in your manual on how to do that, right?
Yes, so it's the same way as printing for the primary. Just make sure that you choose the makeup administration date. So when you go and look at your student list, make sure that under administration you you click on the April date if you're choosing that the April date for the makeup, and that will give you again the full list of your students, and then you choose the students that you need to print tickets for, and that's what you how you get to it. Another way to make sure you have the correct test tickets, the ticket itself will tell you the administration that registration is for, so you can also double check that you have the appropriate test ticket for those students that may be testing in the April makeup window.
There is a question in the chat that perhaps you can answer, and it has to do with the registration number. Is that the same thing as the testing number?
I hope you mean testing number by when they go onto the secure browser, they log in with their first name and then the testing number, so the registration number, then yes. If you're asking about the secure browser itself. So they need to enter a few things. One of them is their first name exactly how it is in the test ticket, no middle, no nicknames. The registration number exactly as it is in the test ticket, including the leading zeros, if that's what you mean by testing number. And then the third thing will be the session ID, which is provided by the proctor for that section that they're going. So if you're asking about the for the students to access the test, those are the 3 things that they will need, and the registration number is printed in the test ticket for the students.
Diane, do you have a question? Because I see that your hand is raised.
I do. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. I have a question. We have a small population of students, so our roster is, we have 11th graders who will be taking the SAT. We still have two PPTs coming up this month to determine SAT status. So is that still in line to be able to enter information, whether they need accommodations or standard time? So is that still okay at this time?
I would recommend that based on the fact that you do have some PPTs scheduled,
Yeah.
in the weeks ahead, if the PPT determines that these are students that qualify for the standard assessment with accommodations, then give me a heads up and let me know that you're going to submit the accommodations in SSD, and I'll work with Keisha to kind of cue her in and take a look at those accommodations. There's a chance that your students might need to test later in that March window if potentially they qualify for the accommodation window, or if we need more time to get them approved in SSD, they might have to test in April. But instead of going through the what ifs, why don't you reach out to me and let me know what the status is once those PPTs are held. And if it turns out that these are kids that don't even qualify for the SAT, but rather qualify for an alternate, then you'll also want to follow up with me so I can make sure that everything's in place so that your students can access their alternates.
Okay, thank you, Deidre.
Looks like we're running up at the end of our time here. And I want to thank Aisa and my colleagues for this presentation. And I want to thank everybody also for attending again. And if you have questions, please feel free to follow up with any of us. I mean, you can certainly get in touch with Deirdre or I very easily. And we have our contacts at College Board who are super, 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 super helpful. So we know we can get the right answers for all of you. So thanks again and have a great rest of the day, everybody.